man is ignorant, he's ill-informed, he is racist, and he doesn't give two monkeys pink backsides.
Education is preparation for reparations.
But it's good to see that you are all still here. And it's important that we are all still here. This is the continuation of a very important conversation, and it's one that we need to take into our homes, our workplaces, our networks, pretty much anywhere we have a presence, and I'll go into that a bit more in a minute. There's a lot to say, and I don't have too much time to say it in, but I want to just share about 3 or 4 things. First of all, I want to thank Belle for all the energy she's put into organizing this. She and her team. I want to thank my dear sister Esther for the leadership that she's given us all these years, and particularly for the energy she brought to straightening us out this morning. And of course, my other panel members. Where's Kofi? Oh, there he is, yes. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is this. Sister Esther said this morning that it's important for us to remember that the reparations agenda encompasses the African diaspora, Caribbean, North America, wherever, but also our brothers and sisters on the continent itself, and we who are in this metropolitan area. I think it's very important that we understand that, particularly in calling out that quite awful man, T.S. Summer, and understanding how we organize, galvanize, and use our power to call him out and make the British state do what they should do. That's critically important. And in doing that, we need to build upon our advances of the past. We did build a black supplementary school movement. We did build the black working class movement in schooling and education. And remember that while we were doing that, the far right in this country was hard at work. Hard at work, harassing our children in school and on the way to school, harassing families in their homes. Some of you are not as old as me, but you have had an experience of nigger hunting, which the Metropolitan Police talked about very nonchalantly a few decades ago. You knew about Paki bashing and the work of the National Front, Column 88, the British National Party, and the rest of it. But what is interesting about all of that is that we who had come from the Caribbean and from South Asia, and were actually working in this place to build communities, including communities of resistance, because of the attacks on our fundamental human rights. We're doing so while we are also engaging with the workplace. The trade unions were not particularly concerned about what we were doing in our communities. They were rightly concerned about conditions of work and wages and health and safety and so on. But in addition to all of that, and the racism that we were experiencing from among trade union white members themselves, we had to deal with the police brutality and harassment on the streets. We had to deal with the extortionate housing landlords and the rest of it. We had to deal with the National Health Service. We had to deal with so many other areas of our lives, relentlessly. But we managed to do that because we had some sense of purpose, and particularly a determination not to let this racist system defeat us. It is that same determination and those same modes of organization that we need to bring to this reparations agenda. Right here in this place. Because you see, we can't have conversations amongst ourselves as mainly adults when our children in schools haven't a clue what we're talking about, when youths in our communities are disinterested in what we're talking about. And so the repair has got to be in relation to ourselves, but also in relation to how we prepare our children to live in this fractured society. And it's a major task. In 1939, the British government sent the Moyne Commission, Lord Moyne, to the Caribbean to investigate the 5 years of unrest, relentlessly, that took place in the islands of the Caribbean between 1934 and 1939. They completed a report at the end of 1939, but it was suppressed. It was so damning, it was suppressed until after the Second World War. For two reasons. The British believed that if it was published, less of us would want to come and join them in the war effort, and that it would be used by Adolf Hitler as propaganda against the British. Two short quotes about what that commission said. Members of the commission asserted that the resistance that disrupted the Caribbean was not a spontaneous uprising with a lofty cause, but rather a demand from the laboring class for better and less restrictive lives. And the report revealed that for the laboring population, more subsistence was increasingly problematic. Mere subsistence was increasingly problematic. The conditions were the result of institutional barriers that sought to maintain the colonial power structure. And that is what Professor Arthur Lewis, who would be the Nobel laureate from St. Lucia, wrote about in his pamphlet for the Fabian Society called Labor in the West Indies. And if you haven't read it yet, do get it and read it. And above all, put in an envelope to send to Keir Starmer. The man is ignorant, he's ill-informed, he is racist, and he doesn't give two monkeys pink backsides about what black people are experiencing in this society. I don't have very much more time. Let me just say this. We have to remember, my friends, that while we were building our communities of resistance and resisting racism, including from neo-fascists, the state was piling on oppression upon us. And when in the late 1980s it started the PREVENT program, we were alerting activists like myself. We were alerting the state to the domestic terrorism our communities were suffering from the far right, from white, ferret-eyed racists. They did not want to know. But then some bombings took place in London, and all of us, and after the 9/11 stuff in New York, and all of a sudden, there was a huge PREVENT program instituted by the government. And that PREVENT program concentrated almost exclusively on terrorism by Muslim people. So young children who had nothing at all to do with politics, never mind terror, were being dragged into police stations, or their parents were being fingered by Channel and PREVENT, etc., because they were making very, very ordinary remarks about what was going on around them. So the point I'm trying to make is this. In an article I wrote for the Jamaica Gleaner, I said you can't plant corn and expect to reap cassava. So all of that stuff that was going on culminated in what we saw on the streets of England after those children were murdered in Southport a couple of months ago. And that brings me to my final point. What is the responsibility of the government in relation to that? It's not just to put them people away for 13 months, 20 months, 13 years, or whatever it is. You don't deal with that issue, that systemic issue, by simply banging up people for as long as you like. The fact of the matter is, as some of you would have heard me say before, that the government has never attended to the question of what you do about the schooling and education system when you were a colonial power, an imperial power, dealing with the barbarism that goes with empire, and treating people around the world who were not white European in the way that you did. Because you weren't doing something just to them, you were doing something about your own white population. You can't go around with that barbarity around the world and not be affected by it yourself. It helps to define who you are, white privilege, white supremacy, and the rest of it, even when you yourselves, as a result of being working class and white, are being treated in the most disgusting ways by the elites within the society. But that has never been on the agenda. The issue of how the schooling and education system can be structured in order to counteract and correct and fix and repair all that damage of colonialism and imperialism was not on the agenda. What happened instead was we were in focus. Multicultural education, learning about the cultures of the people from Jamaica and Grenada and Bangladesh and so on and so forth. But as Sivanandan so rightly said, learning about the cultures of other people doesn't equip you with dealing with the racism of your own. And it is important for us at this stage, now that the government is doing the Labour government is doing its curriculum review, to insist that that gets on the agenda of the curriculum. Keir Starmer has got one thing in his head and one thing only. It's the Holocaust and making sure that everybody who breathes could tell you everything about the Holocaust. All right? That one Holocaust. He's not concerned about the matter, the African Holocaust. And we have to make him concerned about that, because its impact is still affecting daily our children, the way they're taught, what they are taught, and how it impacts upon their lives and their life chances. Thank you.
Education is preparation for reparations.